So if you're not familiar with coding in Unity or coding in general, we're going to take a quick little look at some of the basic elements that make up a script within Unity. So the first thing we're going to do is just create a new script. We'll just create a new default one. It doesn't really matter too much what this one is. We're going to create a new C# script. So we click in our project area, create C# script, like so, and we'll just call this test. Now, when we're creating a script, generally speaking, there's certain formats you want to use. So we won't just call this test, we'll call this test script just to use as an example. And the format that you always use when you're creating a script is every word within your script name, you start with a capital letter. And it's an easy way to break it apart into little pieces. What you can never ever do when creating a script is put a space in between your words. If you put a space in between your words like that, it basically, Unity won't understand how the script works. I'm going to explain why that happens now in a second. So I'm just going to take that space out and I'm going to hit enter here. So that creates the script, and by default, now that I have it selected over here, you can see it shows up here in our inspector. And by default, it fills in a whole bunch of information into Unity that Unity provides by default, basically. But right here, you can see just public class and then test script, which is the name of the script we have. Now, Unity will automatically put this in here, but if you were to type in, for example, if I go ahead and create another script, and this time I'll call it test space script, like this, you can see it automatically creates it over here, but it takes the space out because you can't have a space in your script name. So now, basically what happens is when Unity goes to load this script, it's looking for a script that has a space in the middle of it, but over here, that doesn't exist. So basically, by putting a space in, it just becomes all kind of broken and weird. You can see down here, we've got an error now, all of a sudden, which is obviously not very good for us. So I'm going to delete that script again. And we're just going to open up our test script here. Now I'm opening up in Visual Studio. Yours might open up in MonoDevelop, which is built into Unity by default, but it doesn't really matter what you open up in as long as we can type in some letters and numbers. That's all that matters. Let this open up here. Okay, and once it's open, we'll see we have our script open here in the window. So let's just go through the basics that are part of a Unity script. So by default at the start, we have these things up at the top. We've got using system collections, using system collections generic, and using Unity Engine. So these are just three basic default things that allow us to work within C# and work in Unity. So these are systems that allow us to access C# systems that are built into developing in general on Windows. And then we have using Unity Engine, which allows us to use Unity's specific components. You don't really need to worry too much about it. Basically, all it's saying is that this is how we're able to use specific Unity things. Now, there'll be other things we'll add throughout the course. We'll add into this area on different scripts. For example, if you want to use UI or anything, any coding you want to do with the UI, we'll have using Unity Engine .ui is a good example of one. But we don't need to worry about that for now. We'll deal with that as we come to it. So next we have public class test script. So as we said before, test script is just the name of your script. It's automatically filled in here. And every script that you add in Unity, generally speaking, you need to have a class that matches the script name. We have mono behavior here, which means it's an element that Unity will understand and it knows how to process as a kind of standard object within Unity. You can do different objects here. You can inherit different classes and things like that. But again, that's more advanced stuff that you don't need to worry about when you're starting off. All you need to remember is that every script will start with public class test script mono behavior. And then we've got a bracket here that opens. And then if you highlight it here like this, you can see this bottom bracket also gets highlighted. And it's a curly bracket that closes. So basically what it says is all information about this public class test script is within these two brackets. So everything inside here is stuff that will be run by Unity when it's trying to run the test script. So the other things we've got in here are void start and void update. And you can see with these little lines here, we've got this green text. So when you put 2 lines like this, it means it's a comment, which means that this little bit here won't be read by Unity. So when you want to leave a message to yourself, basically, you just type // here's a little reminder or something like that. So that's what you'll put them in to remind yourself, oh, this is what this little section of code does. And as it says here, we've got use this for initialization before void start. And void start is basically something that happens as soon as this script runs. So as soon as you're playing your game in Unity, as soon as an object in the world with this script attached to it appears, it'll run this little start function. Otherwise, we have a void update. And as you can see here, it says update is called once per frame. So basically, when we want to run regular code within Unity, we'll put it inside of these curly brackets in the update loop, which means every single frame of the game happening, a new thing will happen. So say, for example, if we wanted to update something with a new number. So if we wanted to add, say, 5 to something every frame, we would add it in here. So it would go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, etc. Very, very quickly. But that's basically the main area that we'll be working within Unity. So those are our 2 basic functions that are built in by default into Unity. And one other main thing that we need to remember and understand is the idea of variables. Now, variables are, at a basic level, just objects or values that we want to keep track of. And where we want to create variables in general is up here before our start function. We can just type in here, for example, I'm going to create an int variable. So an int variable is just a number value. Any number value that is a whole number. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 37, 156, whatever like that. As long as it doesn't have any decimal places, it's an int number. So we're going to create an int called, say, we'll just call it test int, like so. And we don't need to give it any value yet. So we're creating this int called test int. Now, if we were to save this script, this is the only change we've made to it. We could save this, and we go back into Unity here. You see down in the bottom corner here a second ago, there was a little rotating, little kind of spinning image that shows when you save a script, when you have it open, when you save it then and go back into Unity, it has to compile that script so that Unity is able to run whatever data and changes you just made. So you always have to wait for that little spinny thing to stop, and then you can go and do whatever it is you want to do. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to create a new empty object. Doesn't really matter what it's called. And I'm going to grab this script and drag it onto there and put it down here. And you can see here now we have our test script is attached. You'll also notice that our test script now has the space here in the component. That's because when you capitalize letters like this in the name of a script, Unity actually automatically knows that, oh, when we show this as a component, we can just put a space before that to make it easier for everybody to read. Now, you'll see in here, we created an int value as a number, but we don't see it in here in Unity. It's not like if we go, say, to our camera over here, you can see these are values, these are numbers here, and they're essentially running off their own script. For example, size here is not an int value because it's got a decimal place. It's called a float value, but it shows up here. So why doesn't our number show up on our test script? Well, that's because there's one important thing you need to remember when creating any kind of variables or anything like this. If you wanted to show up in the editor in Unity, you need to type public before it, like that. Because there's two different ways of showing numbers. We can have a public int, or we could have a private int. So if you don't type either one of these before it, it by default will go to saying, okay, this int is a private one, it doesn't want to be shown. So what we want to make sure we do is type public int, test int, like that. And now if we save it and go back in here, you can see test int magically appears. So we could set this to be whatever value you wanted. like that. We don't want to worry too much about that. That's just an example of how we can show a variable within Unity. And then of course we have this variable, so we could do things. So for example, like I said in the update here, we could say test int equals test int plus 5. So every update it would update that test int value. So we could, just as a quick example, see this in Unity. I'll just save this, go back in here, and you can see our test int is 0. So if I was to go ahead now and hit the play button up here, you can see if we look at our test int, every single frame is getting 5 added on the whole time. So our number is very, very quickly rising up very, very high. I'll just stop this. So you can see at a basic level, these are the main things that we will need. Variables up here though won't just be int values, of course. We can have strings, which are collections of letters and characters. We can have whole objects. We could have our player capsule that we created. Our tiles that we created will store data about their positions within the world and things like that. We'll introduce all those stuff as we go, but for now it's important to understand that we can have variables up the top up here, and then within our update or our start or any other functions that we create, we will control what happens with those variables. Okay, so with that in mind, obviously we don't really want this script to be something we're going to use within Unity, so I'm just going to close this script. We're going to go back in here and I'm going to delete the objects that we just created, and I'm going to delete the script because we want to put our scripts in an actual folder, not just in the same scenes folder we have here. So we want to have a specific place to put our scripts, and that's what we're going to take a look at doing in the next episode when we start looking at how we can get our world and our player moving around.